Although Irish has been used as a literary language for more than 1,500 years, and in a form intelligible to contemporary speakers since at least the 16th century, modern literature in Irish owes much to the Gaelic Revival, a cultural movement which began in the late 19th century. Writers in Irish have since produced some of the most interesting literature to come out of Ireland, supplemented by work produced in the language abroad. Early revival. By the end of the 19th century, Irish had dwindled from being the dominant language of Ireland to being the first language only of a minority, and little literature was being produced. The Gaelic Revival sought to arrest this decline. In the beginning, the revivalists preferred the style used in early modern Irish, notably by Geoffrey Keating in Fora's Fisa a Erin, a much-read 17th-century work. Satan's Irish, however, was soon ousted by the popular dialects actually being spoken in the Gaeltacht, especially as championed by a native speaker from the Coolia Muskerry area, Father Peadar Ueleary, who in the 1890s published, in a serialized form, a folkloristic novel strongly influenced by the storytelling tradition of the Gaeltacht, called Sayadna. His other works include the autobiography Mos Klfe Acutien and retellings of classical Irish stories, as well as a recently reissued adaptation of Don Quixote. Ueleary was soon followed by Patrick Pearse, who was to be executed as one of the leaders of the Easter Rising. Pearse learnt Irish in Rosmuc and wrote idealized stories about the Irish-speaking countryside, as well as nationalistic poems in a more classical, Keating-esque style. Padraig O'Connor was a pioneer in the writing of realistic short stories in Irish. He was also to the forefront of Irish language journalism. His most important book is his only novel, Dia Right, which combines realism with absurdist elements. He was to die in the 1920s, not yet 50 years old. O'Connor became something of a mythical figure in Irish literary folklore because of his highly individual talent and engaging personality. Early 20th century writing from the Gaeltacht. For the end of the 19th century, researchers were visiting the Gaeltacht to record the lives of native speakers in authentic dialect. This interest from outside stimulated several notable autobiographies, especially on Great Blasket Island, Peag by Peag Sayers, and Toilianic by Tommaso Criomden, and Fishblian Agathes by Miris O'Sulibhain. Michi McGabbon was the author of Rothamore and Soil, written in his native Ulster Irish. The title refers to the Klondike Gold Rush at the end of the 19th century, and the hardship Irish gold seekers endured on the way to Tir the gold country. Another important figure was the prolific writer of rural novels, Séamus O'Griana. Séamus O'Griana's most important contribution to modern literature in the language might be the fact that he persuaded his brother Sosum to write in Irish. Sosum was a less prolific and less fortunate writer than his brother. He was stricken by a severe depressive psychosis in 1935 and spent the rest of his life, more than 50 years, out of psychiatric hospital. Before his psychosis, however, he wrote an impressive novel about the difficult transition to modernity in his own Gaeltacht, called Andrumamore, as well as a powerful and introspective account of his travels called Mobalic Cafe Acutien. His last novel, Dharma Biod Ruborlarneen, a study of the alienation of a Gaeltacht man in Dublin, was left unfinished, a fact suggested by the title. Both brothers were acknowledged translators. In addition to Walter Scott's Ivanhoe into Irish, Sosum's work in this field includes the Irish versions of Joseph Conrad's Almayer's Folly, in Irish Dydd Sail Almayer, as well as Peadar O'Donnell's Adrigul, in Irish Idar Baal. Irish language modernism. Modernist literature was developed further by Meilton O'Cadhain, a schoolmaster from Connemara, who was the Irish language literature engagé par excellence. He was active in the IRA, and spent the emergency years at a detention camp in Currach Childara together with other IRA men. At the camp he began his modernist masterpiece, the novel Century na Killer, reminiscent of some Latin American novels. This novel is a chain of voices of the dead speaking from the churchyard, where they go on forever quarreling about the bygone life in the village. The novel is a refutation of the romantic view of the Gaeltacht typical of the early years of the linguistic revival. In addition to Century na Killer, Meilton O'Cadhain wrote several collections of short stories. An important part of his writings is his journalism, essays, and pamphlets, found in such collections as O'Cadhain I Beasta, Caishan, and Caithfir Istecht. Meilton O'Cadhain's prose is dense, powerful, and difficult for the novice. His style changed and became simpler with time, in part reflecting the urban world in which he settled. Essentially, he wrote in an enriched form of his native dialect, even in contexts where a less dialectal style would have been appropriate. He was not afraid of enriching his Irish with neologisms and loanwords from other dialects, including Scottish Gaelic. Modernism and renewal are also represented by several writers not of Gaeltacht background, such as Owen O'Tuerisk, Diarmid O'Sulibhain, and Brendan O'Duavlin. O'Tuerisk, a stylistic innovator, wrote poetry and plays as well as two novels on historical themes, Latic and De Acutluin. Diarmid O'Sulibhain sought to adapt Irish to the urban world, and Urin Bheo and Cowan Thuefi Acutien offered a depiction of a middle-class environment and its problems. O'Duavlin's Ne Acutael Maidin Agustinoish is an example of introspective modernism. Among the outstanding Irish language poets of the first half of the 20th century were Sean Riordan, Meilton O'Dirain, and Merrim Hacintsaoi. O'Riordan was born in the Cork Gaeltacht. His poetry is conventional in form but intensely personal in content. He was also a notable prose writer, as evidenced by his published diaries. O'Dirain, born on the Aran Islands, began as the poet of nostalgia and ended in austerity. Merrim Hacintsaoi, who is also a scholar of note, has published several collections of lyric verse in which the classical and colloquial are fused. Writers in Irish abroad, countries other than Ireland, have produced several contributors to literature in Irish, reflecting the existence globally of a group who have learned who cultivate the language. It is worthy of note that these writers and the readers do not always form part of the traditional diaspora. It has been argued that the use of the language by non-Irish writers has nothing to do with a specifically Irish identity. Instead, its importance lies in its use value as a language of work, personal relationships and creativity. A number of such writers, both Irish and foreign-born, are to be found in North America, Australia and various European countries. Dutch-born Alex Hymans has published 3 books in Irish, an account of his life in Brazil, Favela, a novel, essay eerie, and a collection of short stories. Gunter Panu-Petteri Höglund, a linguist, writer and translator, belongs to Finland's Swedish-speaking minority. He uses Irish as a creative medium, and has set himself the goal of producing entertaining and modern writing in an Irish up to Gaeltacht standards. For a long time he experimented with Ulster Irish on the web, but he published his first book in Standard Irish, albeit strongly influenced by native folklore and dialects. Tornach Mac Conmidhay was born in Dublin and now lives in Switzerland. He has published journalism in Irish, French and Romansh. He has published 2 books in Irish: Is Main Artianga, Nartin Gachasil Teachrice S. Mawantiches na Hiopa and Muintira Celia Cute Tibiachi Agasatianga. Dublin-born writer Thomas Maxio Moyne has been living in Barcelona since 1997. He has published over a dozen works in Irish in this period, as well as translations from Spanish and Catalan. Sayama's own Eachton is a 5th-generation Irish-American who has published poetry, fiction and journalism in Irish. He is also the founding editor of An Gael, an international literary journal in the Irish language. Maurice O'Scanlan, a native speaker from the Kerry Gaeltacht now resident in Melbourne, is the author of an autobiography called An Mamo Diaz, describing his life in Ireland, England and Australia. Derry-born Padraig O'Siatale has been living in Halifax, Nova Scotia, since 1987. In this period, he has published 10 works in Irish, including a collection of short stories and 2 novels. Bantry-born Derry O'Sullivan has been living in Paris since 1969, apart from an interlude in Stockholm. He has published 4 collections of poetry in Irish. Colin Ryan is an Australian whose short stories, set mostly in Australia and Europe, have appeared in the journals Feaster, and An Gael. He has also published poetry. A collection of his short stories was published by CLOIR in 2015. Literary magazines. The oldest Irish-language literary magazines responsible for the encouragement of poetry and short fiction are and Feaster. The latter, presently edited by the poet and activist Padraig Macafagusa, is the journal of the Gaelic League, though it has an independent editorial policy. Both magazines publish short fiction and poetry. The Manifesto of Feaster also declares that one of its objects is to encourage students to write in Irish. Feaster has enjoyed more stability than which suffered from a declining readership and has now been reconstituted. The withdrawal of support by Foras Nagi Elge, a major source of subsidies, may affect the future. Both magazines have had as contributors some of the most notable figures in modern Irish language literature, and continue to encourage new writing. They have since been joined by An Gael, an international literary magazine established in North America but publishing prose and poetry in Irish by writers from a number of different countries, including Ireland, Australia and Finland. Irish-language publishers. A number of publishers specialize in Irish-language material. They include the following. CLO Shazel publishes books in Irish only. It produces books for children, teenagers and adults. CLOIR Chonacht, founded in 1985, has as its particular aim the publishing of work by Gaeltacht writers. It has published over 300 books, predominantly in Irish, together with music. Cois Life, established in 1995, publishes literary and academic works. Its output includes plays, fiction and poetry. Cois Saim, founded in 1980, has published about 700 books, making it the largest private publisher in Ireland. Ungum has been publishing books in Irish since 1926 under the aegis of the Irish State. It is the largest Irish-language publisher in the country, and now mainly publishes lexicography, textbooks and other curricular resources, together with material for children and young adults. Unsnaithfade MHOR, founded in 2005, aims to publish high-quality contemporary books. Irish Pages, founded in 2002, is a bilingual English and Irish journal. Its September 2010 issue was dedicated to writing in Irish.